Hi guys, so I'm in a new location today because I've been sitting outside enjoying this really nice weather and I didn't want to move. I stole Winnie's chair because it's as much level as I can get with the laptop. So that's why she's sitting on my lap. She would sit on my lap anyways, but yeah, I'm enjoying watching the clouds rolling. We're supposed to get a big storm today and tomorrow with like lightning and thunder. So I wanted to film a video before like the thunder comes, and then you won't be able to hear me. So for this week, instead of talking about 7 days worth of reading, I'm only going to be talking about 6 days because I participated in a romance readathon last weekend, and so I included it Sunday. So this is from Monday through yesterday, Saturday. And somehow, even with one less day to talk about, I read 11 books, and one's a graphic novel. So 10 books, one graphic novel. But yeah, I know I've, because I'm working from home, I have about like 45 minutes extra time. And I've been using that to take extra walks with my dog and do things like yoga. But still, I'm like, so it's relatively the amount of time I normally would have. But I'm just like going through books. Like I'm thankful that I've been able to keep my concentration. I know I've seen a lot of people talk about how they can't focus on books or things like that. They're more focused on like the news or Twitter or movies or whatever, and like we all have to do what works for us. And for me, like when things get stressed out and like crazy, I just want to like crawl back into my comfort zones of reading. And so yes, let's get into the books. The first one I finished is Brandon Sanderson, Edge Dancer. This is 2.5, so it's in between Words of Radiance and Oathbringer. If you want to follow the series. I've read up until book 3, but I haven't read anything in between. And I was like, novella. I really want to get into some fantasy recently. And so this is a novella, Brandon Sanderson style. If anyone's familiar with Brandon Sanderson, he just like writes like crazy. And so I guess this was supposed to be like in the back of the book, I think. Oh, I can't remember now. I think it was supposed to be like 15,000 words, something like that. But it ended up being like over 40,000 words. So this novella is like, I think it was like 272 pages. So yes, but this is following one of the characters that was mentioned in book 2, and she's also prominent in book 3. So this like gives the background story of her perspective, and her nickname is Lift, and she has her powers. She calls them her awesomeness. So like she's because she I can't remember what she's called. She's like a wind dancer. I can't remember exactly what the name of her like power, what it's called, but she can like make her feet or hands or whatever slick, like slippery, and so she can like glide on any kind of surface. And so someone has to grab her like this, like slip right out of her out of the grasp. And so yeah, we follow her like on this like zany adventure. Her character's always been pretty zany, so like following her storyline, I mean, yeah, you're going all over the place. She tries to break into a palace and somehow manage. I don't get to anything away, but somehow manages to like completely disrupt their power system and get someone in place to be like an emperor. I think it's an emperor or like a leader, and so yeah, and then you just follow her like she just leaves for like, and her guide is like, why are you leaving this like safe space? You have all this food you can eat, and all these comforts. And she's like, oh, I'm bored or whatever. She just like gives it like throw off reason, but there are reasons behind it. But yeah, it was a little fun story to read. And then I switched to Bringing Down the Duke. This is the first book in a League of Extraordinary Women series by Evie Dunmore. And I hated this. I didn't hate it. I didn't like it at all. I was very disappointed. This is following the premise sounded really good. It's following a woman who she doesn't have a lot of money, and so she joins a university to educate herself, and then she gets involved in a suffragette movement. And so her and her friend, her co-students want to try and get people in power to agree with their rights and help spread the word faster. And so she approaches a duke, and the relationship goes from there. But yeah, I didn't care for either one of the main characters. The writing, I don't know, was like off-putting in a way. I don't know. I could never fully visualize the storyline, and I didn't care at all for the characters, and that's odd for me. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, and I don't know exactly if I'll read anything else by this author. I can't remember if this was a debut novel. I mean, I'll click the author and see. But I think I looked it up after, and I was like, oh, it's a debut novel, so maybe that's why the writing was just, I thought was bad. Yeah, so yeah, this is her debut novel, so it makes sense. But yeah, anyway, so I won't go on too much about that one. The next one I read is The Many-Colored Land. This is the first book in the saga of the Pliocene Exile by Julian May. And this is like a old school sci-fi book. And I've never read anything by Julian May before. And again, this is more like when the premise sounded good, but I didn't like it that much, unfortunately. So this is about the 22nd century, and there's this portal that you can go back 6 million years, but you can't come back. They tried that with animals, and they just like disintegrate into dust. And so the person in power of this tunnel decides, the time travel port decides to make some money off of it. And so it follows a group of characters who, for one reason or another, decide they want to leave their current land and go back in time to the Pliocene era. And so it's just, there's too much going on. I think you have time travel. You're in the future, then you're in the past, and you have like dinosaurs and sci-fi things, and it's too much, and it never felt focused, and at times it could be boring, and it felt all over the place. So yeah, there's that one, and then I read this is a true novella, I think, because it's 112 pages, which I think 100 to 150 pages, that would be a novella. This is the 3.5 in the Pen Cage series by Greg Iles, and this is The Death Factory. And I started the series, and I have all because I heard about the Natchez Burning trilogy, or the Natchez trilogy. But it's like that's like books 4 through 6. You don't have to read books 1 through 3, I don't think, but I wanted to. So but this whole me reading the series was inspired by that. So finally, after this book, I can get to that book. But I think there's quite a few novellas intermingled in the series, but this is the first one. I saw it in my library, so it's okay. I'll check it out. And but this is following a man who used to be a Houston prosecutor, and then he switched to writing novels, and he moved to his hometown in Mississippi to be closer to his parents, to help raise his daughter, because his wife passed away due to cancer. And so this story focuses a lot. He goes back in time and talks. He's talking with his uncle all about a case that occurred in Houston. It's like still sticking with him, and also talks more in depth than he has in the previous 3 books on his wife passing. So yeah, this is like a lot more emotional book. Normally he writes like big, chunky, like thriller mystery books, and you just go on a ride, lots of action. This is a lot more of just like dwelling on things that happened, and I'm sure there's a lot of foreshadowing maybe with what's coming in this the future book. I then read The Way to a Man's Heart. This is a Debbie Macomber book, and this was part of like the novella series that I was reading last week, so I wanted to finish like part 2 of that book. And I think it's a novella, or it was just a small book put in there. But yeah, I didn't like this one either. I think I don't know, like a highs and lows this week. But this is following, the main character's name is Megan, and she works at a Wichita diner, which I think is like unique for at least for the books I read by Debbie Macomber. They all are set in Washington. This one's set in Kansas, and so it's following a waitress, and she loves literature, which I'm like, oh, I can get behind that. She reads lots of classics, and so one day she encounters a man who has like books at his table, and so they start a conversation, and come to find out he is a professor at the local college. And so through her being friends and then having a relationship with him, she decides she wants to go back to school. And because she's going back to school and attending a university that he teaches at, there is like he doesn't want her to be in his classes and things like that. There's lots of controversy there, but their relationship I didn't like. Like I think it was like their first date. He comes to her house to pick her up, and her kitchen, like a pipe in the kitchen, bursts, and so she's like struggling to clean it up and get herself presentable before coming to the door. And she's like, "Hold on, like give me 5 minutes," and he immediately jumps to the conclusion that she has a man there in the house, and so she wants to get him out and before the new guy can come into the door. And yeah, there's just so many different clashes with them. Like they fought way many more times than they had like these happy conversations. And so yeah, I didn't care for it. I didn't find their relationship believable. And yeah, this was definitely the worst book I read by David Makeover. Most of the other ones I read, I really enjoyed. The next one was What Happens in Paradise. This is the second book in Paradise series by Ellen Hilderbrand. And this is another author that hasn't failed me yet. But this one I didn't like. Oh, like the first one was excellent. It was like full of tons of surprises. It's about a woman named Irene. I think her name's Irene. Yes, Irene. Okay. And she's living in Iowa City, and just living like kind of like a low key lifestyle. Her husband starts traveling for work, and so they start having a little bit more money income. So she puts it into the house. She's focused on that. Her 2 kids, she raises her 2 boys, and they go to college. So they have like an idyllic lifestyle, life. And then surprisingly, unexpectedly, her husband dies in a plane crash, and so she goes down she goes to where his body was, and that's in the Caribbean, and come to find out that he has like this job. I don't want to spoil anything, but he has this job that brings him lots of money that he has hidden from her. She knows nothing about it. He has a whole house in the Caribbean and a huge mansion and a whole another life down there. And so yeah, it was very intriguing. And so this is like I think it's going to be a trilogy, maybe. At least there's going to be another book in the series. But this is like for sure just a book full of filler. I just think it wasn't necessary. I think that part to the story, like book 3 that's coming out, I'm presuming, could easily have just been this one, the duology. It does not need to be a trilogy. And so yeah, the only reason I finished this book was because I really liked the characters from the first book and the story from the first book. And so yeah, if it wasn't for that, I would not have read this. And for sure, if you want to pick this book up or read the trilogy or series, whatever, you have to go back and read the first one. This one would spoil, and it also wouldn't make much sense. Then I read Sisters by Choice by Susan Mallory. This is the 4th book in the Blackberry Island series. And I haven't read any of the other ones in this series, but this is following, unlike the previous book, this one you can pick up, I'm sure, any book in the series, and it would make sense. So I'm looking at this so I can figure out what the names of the characters are, so I can like describe this better. Because I don't say first, second, third sister. I always get all tangled. So the first sister is Sophie, and she is, let's see, 1 second. Let me find where I can give like a description of who these sisters are. Sorry for the lull. So again, if I can edit, I would cut this out. One day I need to teach myself to edit, because I keep saying, oh, if I can edit, I would do this. But, okay. So there's Sophie, who her business burned down, and so she's relocating to where her, I think they're not really sisters, I think they're all cousins. Basically, she's relocating to where her family is from, and she is wanting to open up a cat store, and she dates around, but she makes it very clear that she does not want to get into a relationship that ends in marriage, and she doesn't want children, I think, also. And so I really like that in a romance novel, because at least for the ones I've read so far, I haven't seen much of that. And so yeah, I appreciate that, being more independent, because you can have a relationship and be independent as well. But that kind of like lifestyle you don't often see in romance books. And then the second character is Christine, and she was married at a very young age. She got pregnant, I think right after high school, and she's in a relationship with her high school sweetheart, and she's having a rocky time now. And then the third one is Heather, who she is the youngest one, and she is constantly in conflict with her horrendous mother named Amber. I like the mother is very, very selfish. She only cares about herself. She doesn't care anything at all, at least it seems like, for her daughter Heather. She takes all of Heather's money and expects more than what she's given. And so yeah, the mother really brought this series down for me because yeah, I know people in my personal life who are like that, and it just brought back all these memories that I do not want to think about. And yeah, but what drove me batty, not just Amber, but the three characters really enable Amber to continue on, and almost in the end, at the end of the book, they reward her for this bad, horrible behavior. I'm like, no, you don't do that. But yeah, overall, the tone of the book I didn't like, because when I come to a Susan Mallory book, I want, not just to have a happy ending, but to be amused, or be happy to read the story. And this, yeah, maybe I'm just too close to the people I know who are like Amber, or what. But yeah, this did not give me the feelings that I wanted, and yeah, I didn't care for it. And it's just overall kind of like depressing book, I thought. And not just that, but not just Amber and Heather's storyline, but Christine, the one that is married to her high school sweetheart, him, I hated her husband. Absolutely hated him. He was very sexist towards her. He's working and she's working from home, and so we're not working from home. She's a stay-at-home mom, and she wants to go in business. Finally, now that her kids are a little bit older, and so now she has the time and energy to devote to creating something for herself. And he's totally against that. He's like, this money. She has a little bit of money saved up, and she's like, you should spend it on me and the boys and the family. You don't do anything for yourself. And she has a very carefully laid out business plan, and he's not having it at all. And yeah, it was like, I didn't like that relationship at all. So yeah, overall, yeah, a blah book for me. And then I read Logan Likes Mary Ann. This is the 10th book in the Babysitters Club series by Ann M. Martin. And the first thing that I noticed is that there's an exclamation point at the end of this title, and that I didn't like. That's like the first thing, but overall I like the story. But Mary Ann is like the shyest babysitter of the babysitter group, and but there's a boy that likes her named Logan. So I'm like, why the exclamation point? Like, I know, like, I grew up very, very, very shy, and just because you're shy does not mean that it should be like surprising, or like I don't know, like, you're not worthy of it. I don't know, like the exclamation point, like I don't know, like, it was like thought through if that means anything, but yeah, it's like, of all the girls in the group, like, it's surprising, shocking that she's the one that has a guy interested in her. Yeah. Anyway, besides that, Logan is new to town, and he has experience as a babysitter, and so he thinks about joining the club, and immediately, like, the dynamic of the club meetings is thrown off, because these girls are entering 8th grade, and there's lots of things like training bras and things like that, or they want to talk about, and they can't in front of Logan. And so yeah, it was interesting to see a boy mixed in with the all-girl group. I then switched tones completely, and I read Robert E. Lee, a biography of Robert E. Lee by Roy Blunt Jr. And I have a physical copy, but I just thought it'd be easier just to have all the tabs here. But this is what the cover looked like with the dust jacket. And yeah, this one I really, really liked. I think it was like around like 200 pages or so. And I thought it was really well done. If you want to read a biography of Lee, there's like a million out there, but I would highly recommend this one. This one was concise and included like all the topic points, and it really it brought him to life a lot more, I think, than if anyone's read the Douglas Southall Freeman biographies. I read the first one, and there was 4, and I couldn't continue on because they were so worshipful, and Lee could do no wrong, and he was just like, I don't know, like a god. And yeah, I couldn't take that. So this was a lot more like reeled back, and this was written in the middle of 1990s. And so it's like a little bit farther removed than the Douglas Southall Freeman books. And so yeah, I recommend this one. If anyone doesn't know, he was the general in the Confederate side of the army, and mostly in Virginia. Oh, now the tablet's like covered in cat hair. Okay. And the next book I read was Revival, Volume 7, called Forward. And this was by Tim Seeley, and it was drawn by Mike Norton. And I can't really talk about much about this because, I have a cat hair on my nose. Because it's Volume 7. One second. But I can give you the main gist of the storyline. I wanted to read this book because the whole town is in quarantine, and so like, okay, I'm in quarantine. Who knew? I'm not in quarantine. I'm not sick, but you know what I mean. We're all in isolation, self-isolation, and so in this this series, it's one day, and it's actually kind of funny. I'm talking about this book on Easter because the revival is that anyone who died on one day, they all come back to life. And so like if they get hurt, like they'll immediately their bodies will recover. And so yeah, no one died in this town that one day, and so that's what's called revival. And but it's only this one town, and so they locked down the town completely in Wisconsin. And this whole thing's happened. Like the investigators come in, the FBI. There's military involved. This book features a lot about the military, and then you follow the different people who had someone die in their family who are now back to life. And so yeah, this was kind of a funny read to pick on Easter, and I didn't read it today. I read it yesterday on Easter weekend, and during this crazy isolation period. But yeah, this is kind of like, I've never read The Walking Dead, but it's kind of like a twist on zombies, and these creatures also play an important part. But I'm not going to spoil anything about them. And then the last book I read, finally, is With You Always. This is the first book in the Orphan Train series by Jody Hedlund. And I love this cover. I love the green. Green's my favorite color, and I love my favorite color. And yeah, I just love this like kind of style for the cover of a book. And I will for sure continue on with this series. But yeah, talk about the book. It has an interesting mix, I think. It's about a topic that I haven't read much about, historical fiction-wise, but it's about immigrants who are in New York City, and I think it's the 1850s, where this book covers, and 1852 or something like that. And there is an economic downturn, and the hardest hit, the most immediately hit group is these immigrants, Irish immigrants, German immigrants, things like that in New York City. And so they're first out of jobs, and they have no way of making income. And so they, and this main character in particular, she decides to go out west to seek some kind of some kind of income to be able to send back to her siblings, because orphan train, she's also an orphan. She's lost her parents, and so women in particular also, on top of being immigrants, women, they can only be like seamstress or laundry washing, cook, things like that. And so it's a really difficult time. And so she makes her way out west to make some money. And so you also follow the sisters who are left in New York City. What are they doing? And then a whole nother story plot line is a wealthy family who own part of the train that you can see here that it's building out west and setting up towns. And it's following two twin brothers who are given a kind of an ultimatum by their father. It's like, whoever can within 6 months build up their town the best, and who can fall in love with a woman earns his whole entire company. And so you follow the two brothers, the two different towns, and what they all get into. The one thing I would criticize about this book is the resolution with the two brothers. What one of the brothers does is a little bit unrealistic, but it does add like a huge climax and a mystery kind of involved at the end of the book. And so yeah, overall I really liked it, and I'll for sure be picking up more from this author. She's when I looked at her like backlog of books, she's written a ton of historical fiction that I'll have to look and see what my library has. So yeah, sorry for going on a bit with these books. Yeah, I think again like last week I was like kind of rambling a bit because I have no one to talk to, so like I'm just gonna talk to you guys. So yeah, let me know if you've read any of these books, And I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, BookTube.